In today's video, part 2 of our series on the future of corporate social responsibility, you'll learn where the CSR industry is headed. We explore how world events have shaped social impact and how businesses will continue to integrate CSR into the future. Hi everyone, I'm Carl. Welcome to the Social Impact Show, a channel where you get the latest strategies and tips to help you scale and grow your CSR and goodness programs. So my guest today, you've probably seen her before, Nicole McPhail. She is the managing partner of Social Impact and co-founder of Darwin Pivot. Thank you very much, Nicole, for coming back. So today our conversation, it's, I guess, part of a two-part series on the future of corporate social responsibility, where previously we talked about the future of the corporate social responsibility professional. But today we're actually talking about the I guess the profession or the industry as a whole. So where do you think CSR itself is going? And maybe we don't talk about CSR itself, but social impact itself and how it relates to businesses going forward.
You always have a great question, Carl. So I think that there's two major influencers that are driving where social impact is going, and then also kind of aligned to what we talked about in the social impact professional, look forward, those two meet. So the first is something that I know Benevity had talked about as a trend for 2022. So this was in 2021, is all around sort of trust in the four major institutions. So Edelman Trust Barometer came out and they said, basically trust in government, business, not-for-profits, and basically every sector is at an all-time low. And I guess the positive side of this when it relates to businesses is that of those major institutions, business was deemed as the most influential organization to actually create change going forward. So it's a really big opportunity for companies to think about their role. And then in tandem, we have the Great Resignation, which is a phrase that I am sick of hearing and I'm sick of saying, but the reality is it is here. And so with all of the struggles and changes that have been going on, especially throughout COVID, it's really made employees think differently about what work means to them. And so there was a study recently done by McKinsey that said 2/3 of employees from this massive study that they did are actually rethinking what work means to them and what purpose means in their life. So it's this really self-reflective moment where companies, if they want to also retain and keep their people and attract the right people, they need to be thinking about purpose in a new way than they ever have before. And it does go side and side, hand in hand with this idea of like trust in the organizations. And so when companies think about purpose, they have to look at it from three different dimensions. And this is where social impact comes into play, because social impact can support all three of these. So the first is at a high level purpose in terms of what that company means, how they're operating, their ethos, who they are. And a lot of that has to do with sort of the ethics and the social responsibility, diversity, equity, inclusion. All of these things kind of roll up into this bigger, who are we as a company? And then the second piece is around within a role. So what purpose means for how someone shows up to work. And this actually can tie into some of the CSR strategies as well. And then lastly, what purpose means in terms of an extension of the company via the employee. So how can you provide the platforms and the opportunities for employees to give back in meaningful ways and have a sense of purpose? Because no longer are the days where, you can keep your people by dangling shiny objects and giving them Pelotons and like company branded sneakers, because that glow is gone so quickly. But you can create this sense of purpose through helping your people do meaningful work and feeling proud to work for a company that has that shared purpose at a higher level too. So I would say when it comes to social impact going forward, the role is going to be a lot more strategic than it ever has been before, because you're looking at all of these different dimensions. And then you're also factoring in compliance things like ESG reporting. And if your company is following suit with that, this requires a whole new set of skills to be able to actually execute out on this. And I would say right now, most CSR practitioners aren't kind of experienced and trained in that type of ESG thinking. So long-winded way of answering that question. Does that help?
Yes, it does. And I was going to look at it from both sides, right? You've got the professional itself, and I guess the skills that they require, that's going to be changing, as well as what the requirements from the business side will be changing as well. And I think it's not something as set in stone as, hey, you know what, here's a corporate lawyer, this is what we need. And it's kind of pretty much, this is what a corporate lawyer does. Obviously different in different companies, but with a social impact professional who's connected to diversity, equity, inclusion, connected to ESG, connected to sustainability, all those different elements, those are always changing. And the people who, I guess, enter the field, they're coming from very different, diverse backgrounds, right? So like back to the lawyer example, you go to law school, you become a lawyer. Yes, you work in different industries, but you're trained as in law, versus a social impact professional who may actually come from the legal side, but also may come from an engineering side, may come from marketing side, may come from various different elements, which actually brings a very unique, I guess, I don't even know what to call it, a diverse perspective from one role.
It's so true. And I think that's a really great call out, because I feel like the diversity in thought based on all of those dimensions could shape where CSR goes altogether. And I think there's going to be a lot more accountability and a lot more creativity. It'll be less sort of one-dimensional. I think that's a fantastic point. Even my business partner and I have more of a traditional CSR background, but it's coupled with behavioral science. She comes from a form of data science from the geography space that makes her think differently about mapping out social impact metrics and trends over space. What a cool new thing to bring to this space. So the more type of, diverse thinking and experiences that we can include, it is very exciting to think about what's next in this realm.
One thing I also thought about was how social impact, and even just working at Benevity, seeing the various world events that have impacted the role. Because you see it, there's seasonal things like disaster relief comes a certain time of year. There's giving season, but every single time there's sometimes it's disaster, but sometimes it's world change that has an impact on the role. And it's not that often that, like, yes, world change impacts companies and what they do, but actually world change impacts a role so significantly that that role adapts to it over and over and over again. So that was kind of an interesting observation I've had with this role. And I guess in addition to the diverse perspectives, you also have all these world events that continuously shape it over and over and over again.
It's so true. And even COVID is an example,
Exactly.
right? Like, people started working from home. They didn't like having that commute anymore. They realized, what am I doing driving for an hour to and from work when I could be spending it at home with my family? And I think that, like, precursor to where we are now, changed those expectations of employees. And then that was a forcing mechanism for businesses to think differently about the way that they do work. Like, it is so, you're so right. How, maybe all said and done, maybe this is like one of the good things that could have come from COVID. It's like forcing positive change that can be scaled through massive enterprises, as one example. I don't want to say positivity with COVID, but it's, I'd like to think that maybe we could take something out of this that could be positive in the future.
And I guess, like, where do you think business adoption is going? Because we've seen it from major enterprises. And I think there's a lot of pressure coming in for societal pressure, employee pressure. But how about maybe the small, medium, or just businesses getting started? Where does social impact play a role in their growth?
Awesome question. And so Emily, my business partner, and I, we've been talking about this a lot lately because there are people are people. Everyone is expecting their companies to give back, and it's not just enterprise size companies. And I think the difference is in terms of the capacity to actually execute out on these. So it's almost like I think some of these smaller companies are where the bigger companies were back in the day, where they're like, well, we can't afford to hire a full-time employee to do this, but we want to make this available to our employees and our communities. So let's find creative ways to do it. And I think that's what's happening. So it'll be, doubling down on a year-end holiday campaign that has to do with like making donations to organizations. It just isn't as sort of organized as it is for enterprise companies. The benefit though for these smaller companies is, unlike a lot of the larger companies who have to go back and think about, well, how can we rewire the way that our company operates to include purpose and include social impact? These smaller companies can be more flexible to change their ethos around it a little bit easier than the big ones. And so I think that's the opportunity. And hopefully there'll be solutions out there for smaller businesses to be able to facilitate these types of programs, similar to like the Benevities of the world, right?
Yeah. So Nicole, we can definitely be talking about the future of CSR for multiple episodes, but if anybody in any of our audience wants to connect with you, what's the best place to reach you?
Yeah, an easy one, find me on LinkedIn. You can find us at www.darwinpivot.com. And my email address is nmcphail@darwininc.org.
Watch part 1 of our series on the future of corporate social responsibility through this video here, and watch this playlist as you learn how to build a comprehensive CSR strategy. Thanks for watching, and we'll catch you next episode.